Today, I am joined by someone who's raised three incredibly successful sons. Think Naval Academy, West Point, Williams College, and he's written a book about how he did it. Jeff Nelligan is a public affairs executive, an Army veteran, and an author of the book Four Lessons from My Three Sons. Jeff, welcome to Dad's Interrupted. How are you today?
Hey, man, it's great to be with you, Fred. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to be on. I know this show, just with the guys that you've spoken with, all of whom have some incredible stories that with Tuttle 2 weeks ago and the heartbreak and the strength, and Stockdale with that great comment, how he can, what is his role in the presence that he's around other people. Anyways, great stuff. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story and your wisdom. Raising three boys is no small feat. Before we dive into resilience and raising kids, let's rewind the tape a little bit. Take me back to the early years of fatherhood for you. What kind of dad were you when your boys were young?
I will tell you, I was like my father was, old trad, old school. And my dad, maybe the word didn't even exist then. He had a strategy for raising the three of us. And just by sheer inheritance and osmosis, I had the same kind of plan for helping to raise my kids along with their mom. And the strategy is key because people don't really realize this, Fred, but 75% of the time you will spend with your child is over by the age of 12. And by the age of 18, that's 90%. So you have to get to those kids early. Otherwise, the culture will raise them. And I don't think there's any reasonable person listening to this, any dad or mom, who thinks the culture raising their kid is a good idea.
There's a lot of scary stuff out there. We definitely don't want the culture raising our kids in the manosphere with guys like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
We don't need that type of energy. When we talk about masculinity, I think there's a lot of nuance that goes into that topic, and it can feel very confronting for men. And for me personally, I've wrestled with a lot of that. And you're an Army vet, so you definitely have that, like the manliness, right? It's be tough, be strong, go to war, fight for freedom. That's really, truly honorable, man or woman. And yet there's so much more to being a man. It's not just strength through power and control, it's strength through something that we touched on a couple episodes ago with Jason Tuttle. It's strength through courage to admit that you are weak, admit that you're struggling, and ask for help in those moments. Definitely resonate with that message. Did you always parent with a plan, or did these lessons emerge over time?
I always had a plan. And of course, I should say right here that their mom, my ex, deserves 90% of the credit for how they turned out. I get 10% for being a major league nag all the time. But together we had a plan. But my plan was to just build them in four basic categories: personal conduct, gaining confidence, resilience in adversity, which I think is in virtually every one of the themes of the men you've talked to. And the fourth one being developing ambition. And that was the whole exact propellant behind everything that we did and the things that I set them up to do. And of course, the biggest part, and this is going back to Tuttle and you're strong when you're weak, is failure is good because it makes you stop and decide, hey, I've got to try something different because this isn't working. So those were the four themes, and the four themes in the book. But you're presented with opportunities every day, every moment in the real world that's outside the front door. And I took advantage of them with all three boys.
Where did the idea for the book come from? Was that a reflection that you had? Was it feedback that your kids gave you? Was it something else?
I'll tell you, I drove home from dropping the last kid off from college, and it was West Point, on to the manosphere, baby, because that's about as rugged and masculine as it's going to get. And I drove up, and I'm sitting in my backyard with my Victory cigar and a Red Bull, thinking, now what am I going to do? I have all this time. No more going to games or school events or taking them around places. And I thought, you know what? I got three kids out there in the world. He's the youngest. He's just starting. And I'm going to write about what pretty much I followed, and in the hope, in a humble hope, a modest hope, that maybe a few dads might listen and go, hey, I'd like kids similar to that. And that's how it began.
Now you've raised three boys who are clearly driven and accomplished. I imagine the journey wasn't always smooth, especially with your demanding jobs. On this show, we talk a lot about the tension between wanting to be a great dad and then the reality of work pulling at us, distracting us sometimes. And I say distracting, but our work is important as well. You've worked in Congress, you've held presidential appointments, and you had a high pressure public career. Was there ever a moment where you felt like your work life was threatening to crowd out your role as a dad?
Yeah. And I think any dad, yeah, I had some pretty neat roles and I was very fortunate to get them. But hey, a guy that's just the general manager of an auto zone, he's got the same kind of pressures on him. A guy who's HVAC or a guy who's an insurance executive. Every dad has that pull on him. And I think the two key elements of handling my jobs at the time were, and this is just mechanics, doing a lot of stuff early in the morning and doing a lot of stuff late at night and planning the day so that those things you could do in those periods of times you kept there. And the rest of the time you could, for example, drive from Capitol Hill to Landon School, 25 miles away at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, watch a lacrosse game where your kid sits on the bench
Mm.
and drive back and continue the work. So I think those ideas, as I say, the mechanics of early morning, late night for the stuff that could be done, and then filling in the day with whatever the kid or kids, in my instance, all three of them playing sports 3 seasons every year required.
Looking back on that time when you were more active, because now your kids are grown, what do you wish you had done differently? Or maybe what are you proud that you held the line on?
Wow. You always want to do something differently. Like I said earlier, that's part of your breaking the cycle
Mm.
because the cycle, even if it's pretty good, it's not perfect and it maybe never will be. I should have taken my foot off the gas sometimes on the kids. Although even if I had, they still would be doing what they're doing now. All three are military officers. And I guess I wish I wouldn't have been so nervous about their futures. It was always a low grade anxiety about, hey, this game or this test or this tournament we're going to be in at Princeton or in Boston. You got to perform, man. There's a lot of coaches watching. I wish I would have laid off the gas.
You did mention in some of the questions I asked prior to you coming on, and I think it's something every dad can relate to. You said had a fear of becoming a nag.
Yeah.
Um, that balance between pushing your kids without killing their internal drive is really difficult. You said this was your biggest struggle. How did you encourage excellence without making it feel like pressure?
Wow. Boy, you're threading the needle on that question. I was blessed they were blessed as well to have a wonderful mom. And she was a great check and she was a great model. And she was also inspiration. And so they learned probably more from her than me. But boy, 9 years old, you're turning the corner there on a lot of stuff. And it's tough to push them too hard and then not push enough. Put the hammer down and then release it off of them. I, but at the same time, it's such an opportunity.
Was there ever a moment where one of your kids pushed back on you or told you that you were going too far?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
I
And
figured that
they,
was the answer, but I just had to ask.
yeah, you know, no perfect fathering here, man. Yeah, in fact, I wrote about it in the book. One instance, I was nagging the kid who was in 10th grade, who's the eldest. I'm going, hey, man, you got to run for student body president. It'll look good on your record. You know a lot of guys. You're totally good on your feet. And I kept nagging him, and he kept just demurring. Yeah, Dad. Yeah, Dad. So finally, I just said, man, you got to really run for office. And he looked at me and he used this phrase we always used to use about a kid on one of our lacrosse teams who was the greatest player that they had ever played with, who was an All American in college. And always at the end of a game, it was always get the ball to Louis because Louis was the only chance you had to score. And my point with saying that to him was know your place in the world, on the field, wherever, know where you fit in. And so he's looking at me as I'm nagging him and he goes, hey, Dad, I'm getting the ball to Louis, i.e., I know exactly what I'm doing and you don't. And I just backed off and said, you know what? You're right. So, yeah, I mean, There's a lot of times there's a lot of self-deprecation in the book because no dad lives it perfectly, like telling about the time I got fired from a job, or driving around big cities full of buildings where you see 20, 30 stories just block after block, and you're going, oh man, this is so depressing. This is the modern age. And then you're pointing to one as all three are in the car. On the seventh floor up there is a guy sitting at a desk with a coffee mug like you made me in second grade and a picture of his family on his desk. And he's staring at a screen. And this guy was going to be somebody. He was a big shot at Landon School, and he was going to be a jet pilot or run a string of restaurants or be in real estate or sail around the world. Instead, he's looking at this screen and he's saying to himself, what the hell am I doing here? And I said, guys, that guy is your dad, and you have got to get farther than I have. So that, and they're in shock listening to that. But that's the kind of thing a dad has to yank out at sometimes, that, hey, man, it goes back to Tuttle. My weakness is my strength. You guys can do better.
In some of the men I coach, I teach the 4 T's of communication: timing, tone, technique, and truth. And I can't take credit for that. I don't honestly know who began the 4 T's of communication, but I found it somewhere and I loved it. And I think it's really helpful to break down communication. It's a model, it's a framework that I can rely on and see where maybe I made a mistake when I revisit a conversation that didn't go so well with my wife or with my kids.
Yeah.
Speaking of the military, did your military background shape how you handled tone, how you handled discipline, how you handled structure in your home?
Yeah, it did. I was in the Army Reserves for 14 years. But before that, I had been on a lot of athletic teams, which is just a natural corollary to being in the service. And at the same time, I was in politics, which is a very rigid structure, because in politics, every day you're winning or losing. You're closing the deal or you're walking away. That discipline and that structure from early on, from being on teams, and indeed, the three kids, the reason all three were in the military, one Naval Academy, one West Point, the other guy, Williams, who went to OCS right afterwards, is that environment of being on a team brings out, and you as a fair play coach, you might recognize these. Number one is you have to get along with a lot of people on a team, camaraderie, some of whom you don't even like, but it's all for the team and it's all real every day at practice. The second thing is you're going to be sitting on your fanny's going to be on a bench unless you put the personal discipline in to get better at the sport. And the third thing is, which is great about sports, it's great about the military politics. At the end of every day, there's a scoreboard and there's a winner and a loser. And if you get too complacent being the loser, you've got a problem. So those three aspects of sports, and they all played in college, were essential to, and they played in high school at a pretty good level. Not a high level, good level. By the time they got to go into college and everything else, the military was a natural fit because, again, it had the masculinity. That was the word you used at the beginning. But it also had that structure and camaraderie that you were just noting.
The idea of winning and losing is always such a nuanced topic too, because
Yeah.
it's like, how do you define it? What actually matters? And so I think sports are a great way, especially team sports. They're such a
Yeah.
great way to
Yeah.
build resilience and build character and build discipline, because to your excellent points, personal discipline to get better at the sport, or else you're going to be sitting on the bench, right?
Yeah.
No, and that's not fun. I sat on the bench my entire freshman year playing high school baseball. I made the JV team. I sat on the bench the entire year. I think maybe I pinched hit once or something, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun
Yeah.
time, and it was a wake up call for me because I had been one of the better players throughout the local
Yeah.
recreational leagues before high school, and now I'm on a junior varsity team. I'm a freshman. I'm small, and it's like,
Yeah.
why is he not playing me? I know I'm good. I'm confident, but he's not letting me show him. How do I do that? So it's really a great way to learn some lessons in life. But winning the game, right, one game or even the championship, right, versus how are you conducting yourself on a day-to-day basis with your team, and how do you conduct yourself when you lose a game or lose the championship,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yeah.
that winning is, I agree with some of the parents when they talk about it's not all about winning. And I also agree with some of the parents who are like, really, win or don't. Winning's what matters. I think there's something in the middle there where it's, yeah, like winning's great. Winning's fun, right? And if we want to be a good coach, we got to win. But winning a game when you're 10, 12, 15, 18 versus winning at life, winning in your
Yeah.
relationships, winning in your career. That's really what I'm interested in. And I'm not saying anything wrong about winning a championship. It's awesome. But
Yeah.
you also got to win in other places. There's a lot of areas of life where we're looking at some wins. I love your mantra that you live by. It's related to the military background: assess, adapt, advance.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that plays out in parenting. Where did that phrase come from, and how did you use it as a dad?
It came from old Drill Sergeant Harrison, big, black, bold badass at Fort Benning at infantry school. And he would always just pound that into us. And he was one of the most remarkable men I've ever met in my life. He was just, that whole platoon would follow him over a cliff and not even blink. That's the kind of leadership and presence he instilled in guys. But I loved it. And hearing it as a young guy at infantry training at Benning, it just seemed to be that's the way you should approach life. And so one of the things I did that's maybe counterintuitive to being a good dad is I always love to see my kid in tight situations, all three of them. And sometimes I put them in them deliberately to see how they'd react. Because once you get over one bad situation, you get the confidence for the next one and the next one. And you and I we're adult men, man. No one gets a free ride. Every day is a scene of some sort. So early on, I would give them tests like we're standing in an indoor mall Saturday. It's packed in DC, and I just whip out my wallet and say to all three of them, "Hey, here's a $5 bill each. Go get me change. It's not a race, but don't come back here unless you have change for each five." And off they went. They were delighted. And one kid had to go into a couple stores. Another kid came back with 20 quarters in his pocket. But they all came back and they were delighted at the test, sending him into this new arena. Yeah, now today someone would say, you've got to keep an eye. No, the real world is not going to treat them that way when they're 13 or they're 23. Let them go. I'll take the risk in order to teach them a lesson. So if you just give them tests like that continually, and these, of course, advanced. We're at an airport and I give the 7-year-old all the paperwork and I say, go get us 5 boarding passes. We'll be right here. And a kid goes, figure it out, man. There's no whining, no coming back. So those kind of tests, as harsh as they sound, build in a kid that kind of resilience so that that 5-year-old in the mall in the middle of DC with 3,000 people around him to get change is the 24-year-old on the bridge of a guided missile destroyer in the Persian Gulf at night when Iranian patrol boats and mines all around him. And he's the guy they choose because they know he's the lieutenant who's going to make the right decision. So that reaction to adversity, it builds muscle memory early, and then kids never lose it.
I like to think about resilience a little bit differently because I agree with you. I think it's important to build it, and I love those examples. Although I will, I agree, it's a little scary world that we live in now.
I know.
But when I was a kid, I was outside all the time. I was in the
Yeah.
woods. I was off and running. I remember one time in particular, we had a highway right behind our house, the Taconic State Parkway. If someone's
Oh,
listening from New York, if you're
yeah.
familiar, yeah. And it was not even a quarter mile from behind my house. And so we were in the woods right behind our house, right next to the Taconic, all the time. Anytime the weather was good, we were out there. I remember one day a car stopped. Me and my brother Brian were in the woods, kind of playing, goofing around, whatever we were doing, looking for bugs or animals or whatever. And a car stopped, and the guy got out of the truck and starts approaching us. Now, our instincts, of
Whoa.
course, was to get the F out of there. So we
Yeah.
did. So we ran back to our house and told our parents, and by the time they came out, he was gone, long gone. I don't know what his mission was there. I don't know if he was trying to do something nefarious or not, but the point being, to your point, is yes, let your kids experience some of those kind of challenges and make
You bet.
decisions. But one thing about resilience that I guess I want to add is I don't think it's a muscle that you build one time and then you can flex it.
Oh, no.
I believe it's
Right.
something that you have to work on all
Yeah.
the time and continue to practice it because you can lose it. It's the way I look at like all the work I do is fitness. We talk about physical fitness with men a lot because that's again the more manly masculine type of idea of fitness.
Yeah.
But my work is relationship fitness. My work is emotional fitness. Is the
Mm.
way I look at it. And with any sort of fitness, you have to, if you want to build muscle, you got to go to the gym multiple times. You got to push against resistance. And it's the same thing for building solid relationships, building emotional architecture. You need to
Hmm.
practice all of this daily. And if you, or every other day, it's not something you do one time and then you're done. And I think a lot of men and a lot of women in relationships, it's almost like you get married, you take it for granted, or you become a parent and then you're supposed to have all these answers, right? And if you're not, then you're failing and you feel bad and you feel shame. And, or the same in relationships, you mess up and now you feel shame about it. And it's, look, you need to build some resilience. You need to realize you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. So, how do you
Yeah.
build resilience? You do the hard thing, and then you do it the next day, and then you do it again the next day, and you
Right.
keep doing that hard thing, and it becomes easier. And so, we want things to be easy, but we don't want to do the work. We don't want to do the work to make them
Oh,
easy.
yeah,
So I
I
just,
agree with.
anyone listening, I think, understand that, like, you're not wrong, bad. You shouldn't feel shame around not having answers in your relationships, as a father, as a husband, as a friend. It's just, if you mess up, own it, right?
Yeah.
And then do better. Like, how do I do better? Read a book, listen to a podcast, have a hard conversation, do those hard things, build that resilience, but don't just do it one time. Oh,
No,
keep doing it.
that's exactly it. And that's why I kind of preface this by saying we're adults. Man, we know no one gets a free ride. Everyone gets hit with some scene every day. And if you can continue to handle those scenes, like my kids get hit with scenes every day
Hmm.
or every couple of days. If you can just build to just attack the problem and say, look, just get 80% down the field. You don't have to solve the whole damn thing. 80% is enough. Move the chains and you'll get there. And you're exactly right. People do it one time. And or with physical exercise as well as you call emotional exercise or emotional architecture. They do it one time. Maybe that's why 72% of the people in this country are overweight or obese. One time is never enough for your body or for your mind.
Yeah. And this isn't taking away from the truth that it is difficult.
Yeah,
It's very
for
difficult.
sure.
So I get the struggle. I struggle. I'm not preaching to say I have all the answers. I'm saying I've lived this. I know how hard it is, and I still struggle. Even as a coach for men, I have a wife. I'm a dad. I don't do everything perfectly, just like you said in the beginning. We are going to mess up. We don't know everything. And sometimes we think we know, we do it, and then we realize, ooh, that wasn't the best thing. Maybe I should walk that back. And I think owning mistakes in front of your kids and
Oh,
modeling that to them
oh
is
man.
so important, to say, hey, you know what? Yesterday or earlier today when I said this, did that, whatever, I shouldn't have done that. I realize now, I thought about it. That was the wrong thing to say. That was the wrong thing to do. And I wish I had approached it this way. There's so much value in showing kids that it's okay to mess up. It's okay to make mistakes, and you will mess up, own the mistake, and then get up and keep going and do better the next time. And if you don't do better the next time, don't sit in the shame and the muck.
Yeah.
You can feel that if that's how you feel in a moment, but shed it and keep going, because your kids need you, your partner needs you, your friends need you, you need you. And so it's, yeah, I feel all of that all the time. You mentioned your heritage. You have a Maori ancestry.
Yes.
I'm curious how that identity shaped the values that you passed on.
Sure. My great grandmother was from New Zealand and she came here. She was a nomad. She was a hard charger and she wanted out of New Zealand just to see something new. Came to the United States, gosh, way back in 1904. And she was the matriarch of the family. And my mom, she was on my mom's side. My mom and grandmother were the same way. So that was part of the Maori heritage. The Polynesian heritage is one of stoicism and toughness. And actually, my all three kids have a Maori middle name in addition to another middle name. And the youngest kid, the guy who went to West Point, he actually now plays pro rugby, but he went full Polynesian and he taught himself Maori. And his middle name is Coy, and he plays for the DC Old Glory Major League Rugby team. And he looks Maori. My gosh,
Mm.
he so that heritage was a big deal. My mom really pounded it home to us, and there was very good aspects of it, and they resonate with some of the themes in the book. Yeah.
Let's shift gears to a lightning
Sure.
round here.
Lightning round. Yeah, babe.
Yeah, quick fire lightning round here. What's one thing you're still learning as a dad?
Patience.
What's the hardest stage of being a dad? Toddlers, teens, 20 something, somewhere in between?
Teens, 12, 10, 11, 13. You got to get that kid on the right road, or at 24, that kid's living in your basement playing Minecraft.
I'm sure your book touches on this, but what's something that your sons taught you?
Patience, again. It's funny. I never learned it. I'm always going to be learning it. No joke. No kidding.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a
Yeah,
hard
man.
one. What is your best dad fail moment that you can laugh about now?
Telling my kid he should run for student body president in 10th grade and then being told, no way. And me just going, he's right and I'm wrong.
I want to talk more about emotional resilience right now because we are, as a culture, are got an interesting shift in the culture where there's a very big push from the manosphere of toughen up, get tough, be resilient in that angle. And then I'm on
Yeah.
the other side of it where I say, yeah, toughen up by becoming emotional resilient and getting in touch with your feelings and being able to talk about how you feel and your emotions in a way that's productive, not in a way that's weak, but in a way that says you're honoring how you're human first, right? You're not man
Right.
first, you're human. And so anger is an emotion that men are very familiar with and are culturally allowed to feel. But then sadness or disappointment or any of the quote unquote negative emotions
Yeah.
is more push it down, suppress it, don't talk about it, don't admit it. And I don't think that's healthy. I think building emotional resilience is healthy. And when I speak of emotional resilience, that is what I'm talking about. How do you honor the spectrum of emotions that you feel as a human being without living in guilt and shame and all of the negative feelings that could persist? And I think the healthiest way to do that is to talk about it, is to admit that you have those. And if you need help, get help. If you need to go to therapy, I think that's great. Go to
Yeah.
therapy. If you need a coach, get a coach. Did you ever come across that? I know you've raised your boys already. And I know back when you were raising them, some of that information wasn't really that common, wasn't really that prevalent, wasn't talked about that much. Did you ever talk to them about feelings and emotions and talking about how they feel and being able to almost like, hey, dad's a safe space to come to tell anything?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And you're right about the period of time when I was raising him versus now, the focus on the man. And it's funny because we began the conversation with masculinity, which I buy into 100%. Had a rugged life and ups and downs and failures and the service and politics and playing sports. My kids have had the same thing, only they've lived it in 29 years rather than 60. But yeah, there was a point, and it's at the end of the book, believe it or not. I God, I'm almost channeling Frederick here, man. I would take them, each kid, once a week and rotate, take them down to the high school bleachers on a Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it was Saturday morning bleacher time. That's what it was called, bleacher time. And we just sit in the bleachers, most peaceful place on the planet is a high school football field on the Saturday morning. And we'd sit a couple bleachers apart. Sometimes we'd bring donuts. I'd say, okay, what was the week like, man? Tell the old man. I'll tell you my ups and downs. You tell me yours. And we just talk and maybe go on for half an hour or an hour. And then we go home. And every kid got that. And that was a schedule. And one of the kids came home from a deployment the Far East. He was on a guided missile destroyer. And the guy's 26 years old, and we're sitting in the bleachers, same damn bleachers, same place, same Saturday morning. And I go, so tell me what you've been doing for the last freaking 11 months, baby. And then I tell him what I've been doing. That was the same when he was 5 years old. Yeah, I had that time. I didn't recognize it as eloquently as you explained it earlier, but that was key and it was regular.
Wow. That is amazing. I love that so much. I work with dads mainly, sometimes couples, but we talk about connection points.
Yeah.
And and I think it's so important to have scheduled connection points
Yeah.
because we can get so distracted by life. We get so distracted by parenting, by work, by all the things, right? So many distractions in our day-to-day life. If we don't schedule certain things, they won't happen. And I love that
Right.
you had that regular routine with your
Yeah.
boys, especially from a dad to a son. That's so lovely. Talk to me about anything because I'm your dad. I'm a safe space. And as they grew up, I'm sure they felt like they could come to you if they really were struggling with something more serious to say, hey, struggle in a relationship, struggle in a job situation. Building that safety and that trust is so important. And
Yeah.
it's one of the most crucial things that a parent can do for their kids is to say, you know what, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, I'm here to listen. I'm not always going to agree with you. I might not
Right.
always be excited about what you're telling me,
Yeah.
but I want you to know you can tell me anything because if they can't tell you, who are they going to talk to?
And it wasn't, I guess what I was doing, as I say, it's in the book, the last chapter, but it wasn't, I didn't put the cast or the eloquent terms around it that you had spoken of earlier. It was just, hey, man, we need to know. Give me the good, the bad. What was the week? And I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you my bad. Yeah, I got fired. How about that? How can you beat that?
Please, hopefully not.
Yeah. But they will come back. There's plenty of times my sons have called me or showed up and said, hey, I got this question about my major in college. What do you think?
Mm,
And I would say, yeah, I tell you what you should do, Mr. Know It All. I said, but obviously you got to ask your mom because she's right 100% of the time. I'm only right about 95. But those some big decisions like, Dad, I have these three ships I can go to, or I have these three ports all over the world. Which one should I choose? And I give them advice, and I'd say this is what I would do, but ask your mom and ask bunch of guys that are peers that you respect. But so
yeah.
kids at 5 sitting on the bleachers will come to you at 25 saying, hey, do I go to Tokyo or do I go to Brussels? That's
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen.
It's really brilliant, Jeff, because yeah, I think that's the best thing you did for your kids, honestly. I
Hmm.
don't know all the things you did for your kids, but that one ritual that you had
Yeah.
is bleacher time. That
Yeah.
is really admirable. Love that so much. I'm taking that from you. I'm going to use it because
You got it, man.
this is one of my favorite things from hosting these conversations is learning new things that I hadn't thought of. Yeah, seriously, that's so good. All right, we got to wrap up. I guess
Yes,
in
sir.
wrapping up, you've been a guest on over 80 shows, but this show is for dads in the trenches, for men trying to do it differently, to be more present, to get it right where it matters most. What would you say to the dad listening who feels like he's falling short today?
I'm going to take the words from a wise coach. I'm going to say, break the cycle today and start anew. How about that? And I'll tell you, here's 3 actionable items you could start with, Dad. Number 1, you take your kid for a walk tonight after dinner for at least half an hour. And over the next couple of weeks, you stretch it to 45 and then an hour. Just you and him, no electronics, just you and him or her, and you just talk. And you do it every night. That's your routine. That's the order from Drill Sergeant Nelligan. Number 2, you grab that kid's devices and you say, there's going to be a whole new scene around here, Junior. And you have and develop, and they're on my website, a social media contract. You're getting 1 hour a day, and so is your old man and your mom. And we're not turning it on in a car. We're not turning it on at a dinner table. And the router's going off at 7:30. You start a whole new. The digital, I would say, addiction has is consuming our youth. The third thing I would do is start easy, and you start tonight. I don't care what age your kid is. You get a book and you say, we're going to read for 15 minutes. You and I'm going to read out loud to you if you're young. And if you're older, you're going to sit next to me and I'm going to read a book and you're going to read a book. And you're going to sit there for 15. Again, like the walking, you extend it, keep extending it. 3 easy things to do. 3 things you could start in 4 hours. Last is get that strategy going. My strategy is easy. It's in the book. It's a simple man, simple strategy. 4 things you're going to learn. And I'm going to give you tests every time I can in the real world. That's what I would tell a dad right now.
Love it. So good. Where can they find your book? Where can they find more about you, Jeff? Tell the listeners.
You bet, Fred. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to do this. My book is available as well as my blogs and podcasts at www.nelliganbooks.com. I also have a Facebook page, Jeff Nelligan Books. I'm on X at Resilient Sons and on Instagram at Nelligan_books.
Let's go. Love it.
But
I'll have all that in the liner notes of the show. So if anyone's listening and driving and they can't write it down, just check out the notes of the show and we'll have all of Jeff's links up there so you can find him and buy his book and start to show up a little bit more present. And I'm sure there's some ideas in the book that we didn't speak about. So yeah, definitely check that out. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on, sharing about an hour with me today. I appreciate your time, of course, and your wisdom. And I love Bleacher Time is where I'm going. That's where I'm
yeah,
going this
baby.
weekend. All right, we'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks, Fred. Thanks for having me. A pleasure.